are through week 1 of the NFL season, and God, am I happy football is back. And with us being through 1 week, we are going to go through and rank our power rankings for week 2 of the NFL season. But before we get into the video, I want to take a second to ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. Really helps us out. If you're a fan of the NFL, you'll love this channel. It's released multiple NFL videos every Thursday and Saturday all season long. Now, let's get back to the video. So starting with 21 to 32, again, I just put the lower ranked teams on singular lists. The big movers here are the Patriots, moving from 32 all the way up to 26. The only reason they're not higher is they're kind of the highest team in that not looking to compete at all tier, which I have being 26 through 32. I still don't think the Pats are really going to compete, so I put them at the highest point in that tier. Additionally, you have a team like the Browns who have stumbled mightily from 12 all the way down to 23, primarily because Deshaun Watson just looks bad. Like, really, really bad. And so, if he can't play quarterback, I just don't know how the Browns are able to win. Their team's still good, but if Watson's their quarterback, I don't know how good they really can be. Next up in our 11 to 20 category, we have the Vikings, Bucks, and Steelers making big climbs up the power rankings this week. The Vikings and Buccaneers definitely played against some weaker teams, but they looked very good in their wins, which allows them to climb these rankings. And the Steelers didn't look as good, but their defense looks very, very good, and they still got a win against a decent team in the Atlanta Falcons. On the flip side, you have a team like the Bengals who's fallen all the way from number 5 down to number 15, and I still think the Bengals could absolutely make a comeback. We've seen Joe Burrow and the Bengals have very slow starts before. Jamar Chase didn't spend much time with the team. T. Higgins wasn't playing, but this team just gives me so many question marks. It's now been well over a year since we've seen a truly vaunted Bengals team. And until I see the old version of Burrow and these Bengals, they're no better than middle of the pack in my books. Now into our top 10, and at 10 we have the Green Bay Packers, and a lot of people might question this pick because they did lose in week 1, but they lost to a very good Philadelphia Eagles team in a very close game. Now, with Jordan Love missing multiple weeks, I would not be surprised to see the Packers fall out of the top 10 in the ensuing weeks, especially if Malik Willis or whoever starts at quarterback is not very effective. That being said, I still do think this Packers team is better than anybody 11 and onward, which is why I slotted them into this number 10 slot. This team can still absolutely compete for a playoff spot, even with Jordan Love missing time. I don't think they're going to be as much competing for the division, given the fact that the Lions should be able to get a pretty good head start on the Packers. But I do think that the Packers still belong here at number 10 and can definitely find their way back into the top 10, even if Malik Willis isn't that good, because Jordan Love in this team is good enough to be one of the better teams in football. At number 9, we have the Miami Dolphins after beating the Jacksonville Jaguars on a last-second field goal. This team, I think, should have done better in their opening matchup, especially given their stadium-based advantage that they have at home with the Heat. But they were in a bit of a dogfight with the Jaguars, a team that we're not quite sure if they're good or bad. Remember, they started 8-3 last year, but ended 9-8. Which version of the Jaguars did we see on Sunday? We're not quite sure, and it also makes us not totally be sure what version of the Dolphins we've seen. All of these teams, every one of them, we still are going to have some questions about, and it's going to take a little bit of time for us to realize who is actually good and who is actually bad. The Miami Dolphins, I still think, are a good team, but Tua definitely missed some receivers sometimes. There might be missing Achane for a few weeks. Raheem Mostert looks like he lost a step. So there definitely are some questions with the Dolphins, but they're still clearly a top 10 team. They still won in week 1. They still belong here at number 9. At number 8, we have the Dallas Cowboys. And if you had told me coming into this week that the Cowboys would easily handle the Cleveland Browns, I would assume that the Cowboys would be moving higher than 8. But I can't really put them any higher than 8, and it's primarily because I just don't trust the Cleveland Browns. That's why we moved them down so much. I feel the Cowboys' domination was a little bit more to do with the Cleveland Browns just not being very good on offense than it was to do with the Dallas Cowboys being an exceptionally good football team. I'm not knocking the Cowboys. It's why they're still at number 8 on this power ranking and absolutely could be moving up. But the biggest issue with the Cowboys has always been that they show up some weeks, don't show up others. But if the Browns are as bad as they looked on Sunday, it doesn't give me confidence that we have a different version of the Cowboys. And so for now, I'm holding them at number 8, but it was a good win on the road in week 1 for the Cowboys that Cowboys fans should be slightly optimistic about, but not too optimistic because that's when the Cowboys burn you. At number 7, we have the Houston Texans moving up 2 spots from number 9 last week after beating the Indianapolis Colts in a very close opening game in Indianapolis. I did predict that the Indianapolis Colts would win that game. I have been a Colts truther, and I think my Colts opinion has worked out to be somewhat accurate with what I've seen from them, at least in 1 week. That being said, the Houston Texans probably also exceeded my expectations. I thought this team might take a little bit of a step back, not take that massive step forward, but Joe Mixon looked kind of great as a running back and might be the offensive touch that this team needed to add. Stephon Diggs got 2 touchdowns. I don't think that's going to be that big a difference because, again, Noah Brown was very effective in that wide receiver 3 role last year. I think Tank Dell and Nico Collins, as well as Dalton Schultz, are enough for this passing attack. I really don't think Diggs adds anything, but I was impressed by Mixon. And if Mixon can add a second dimension to this offense and the defense can hold the fort, then the Houston Texans are one of the better teams in the NFL. The reason they're not higher is because Anthony Richardson completed only 9 passes and still torched this Houston Texans defense. I am worried about this Texans secondary, and some of the better teams in the league might be able to take significant advantage of it, especially given Shane Steichen laid out how to beat this defense. Go deep. So while the Houston Texans are definitely a better version of themselves than I gave them credit for coming into the season, they still do have a bit of a weakness, and so I don't want to put them any higher than 7 until I see a little bit more from them. And hey, 7's pretty darn good. The teams remaining on this list are also pretty darn good teams. At number 6, we have a new team in our top 10, the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles impressed me on Friday Night Football, weird saying Friday Night Football, in Brazil because they kind of stormed all over the Green Bay Packers. Yes, it was a close game, but this offense looked elite. I'm not sure if the passing game looked significantly better than I've seen it look in the past, but the running game with Saquon Barkley was just different. We've seen DeAndre Swift in this offense. We've seen Miles Sanders in this offense. Both running backs were good, but neither running back has been great anywhere outside of Philly. Compare that to Saquon Barkley, who was great in New York of all places, and now that he's with Philly, he got 3 touchdowns in week 1. That is insane. I am not saying that he is going to get 3 touchdowns every week and put up 30 fantasy points for you. That would be ridiculous. But he could absolutely be the RB1 in fantasy this year, above a guy like Christian McCaffrey, even on a per games basis. Saquon Barkley is that guy, and if the Eagles' offense is that much better, oh man, is this team going to be scary, which is why I have them jumping all the way up to number 6. At number 5, we have our highest rated week 1 loser with the Baltimore Ravens dropping from number 3 to that number 5 spot. I mean, you can't blame the Ravens too much. They went on the road in the opening game of the season and lost by a literal toe to the 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. If it was any other situation, I don't think I would have a loser rated this high, but you can't knock the Ravens that much. Yes, their offensive line looks like it needs some help, but everything else about this team looks good, looks effective. Derrick Henry might not be the guy we all expected him to be, though let's wait to see him against some worse defenses and see if we still think that. But Justice Hill absolutely looks like a guy who could spell Derrick Henry decently. Lamar looks like Lamar. Isaiah Likely was phenomenal. I expect Mark Andrews to still be good, and Zay Flowers is still a very good receiver as well. So this team just has everything, and I still expect to be one of the best teams in the NFL for the duration of the 2024 season and playoffs. So a loss, yeah, it stings, but it's not the end of the world for the Ravens. Again, on the road, 2-time defending Super Bowl champion. They're still elite. They're still number 5. At number 4, we have the Buffalo Bills. And the Buffalo Bills had a little bit of trouble with the Cardinals team, especially being down 17-3 at one point. But they stormed back. Josh Allen looked great. The receivers looked more than good enough to complement this offense. And that gives me some hope for a Bills team because that was the big question around them. And again, it might have been a close game versus the Arizona Cardinals, but I really like the Cardinals this year. I am bullish on the Cardinals And so I think that was a tougher win than a lot of other people would make it out to be. Now, we definitely need to see how this team performs against better competition. But what puts the Buffalo Bills at 4 ultimately is they were the 4th best team in my power rankings that won in week 1. They were 7 on the list, but our number 6, our number 5, and our number 3 all took L's in week 1. And so that's more than anything the reason Buffalo jumped from number 7 to number 4. I'm not sure if they're going to be number 4 for long. They have some tough matchups coming up. There's still a lot more to see from this team. But for now, they're number 4. And at number 3, we have my Detroit Lions finishing off with 1-0 after a very tight game against the Los Angeles Rams. A very good Rams team, to be clear. Stafford played out of his mind throughout the majority of that game. The Rams defense looked solid. They had a ton of injuries, but guys stepped up. And I mean, Cooper Kupp, oh my God, Cooper Kupp is back. Holy, he played phenomenally against the Lions. But the Lions, primarily due to their ground game, were able to churn it out, get the win in overtime after letting the Rams score 17 unanswered before a field goal towards the end of the game sent it to overtime. The Lions will need to be better than this to continue to climb in these power rankings and to be considered at the same level as the 2 remaining teams on this power ranking. But again, anytime you can beat any tough opponent like the Rams, you will take it if you are any team in the NFL. And so the Lions move up 1 spot to number 3. At number 2, you have the 49ers holding pat in that position after a domination of the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. I didn't move the Jets down massively in terms of my power ranking, primarily because I already had the Jets significantly lower than a lot of people had the Jets to start, and because I just think the 49ers are that good. It is tough to beat this 49ers team. Remember last year, their 3 losses in the middle of the season, 3 in a row, were with Deebo Samuel out of the lineup. They lost 1 game to the Ravens, a very good team, and then they lost a game at the end of the season that they didn't care about because they already had the NFC 1 seed locked up. Basically, when this team loses games, there is a reason. And on Monday Night Football, they didn't even have McCaffrey. There would have been a reason for this team to lose. And Jordan Mason just goes and destroys what's supposed to be a fantastic Jets defense in the run game. I mean, if it wasn't already clear, the 49ers run game is so good because of Kyle Shanahan more than anyone else. I don't think Christian McCaffrey is the reason this rushing attack is so good. I think Christian McCaffrey's primary value is his ability as a receiver. And we saw in this game, Deebo Samuel kind of filled in for that Christian McCaffrey receiver role when they needed that role. Jordan Mason didn't do much in the passing game. All of this said, I think the 49ers are the clear number 2 in the power rankings, and it is going to take something significant for me to move them out of this spot. And at number 1, it's tough to not have them here. 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. They beat our previous week number 3 ranked team, the Baltimore Ravens, in the opening game of the season at home. Yes, it was a very close game, but you would expect that from 2 very good teams. The Kansas City Chiefs belong in the number 1 spot until they basically choose to give it up. This team they're the best. And as much as we might hate to say it, there's no other way to put it. That's just it. And so that's it for our power rankings for week 2 of the NFL season. But the video's not over. As always, we also predict our Thursday night matchup in this video because our weekly predictions will not be coming out until Saturday after this game is already played. So in Thursday Night Football this week, we have the Buffalo Bills visiting the Miami Dolphins, and the Miami Dolphins have that massive home field advantage that their stadium is built with in terms of the sun, but it might not be as impactful in this game because, it's a night game and the sun goes down at some point. Either way, on paper, this looks like a fantastic Thursday Night Football game. You saw both of these teams be in the top 10 of my power rankings at number 4 for the Bills and number 9 for the Dolphins. I think both teams should be making the playoffs in 2024, are going to be competing for the AFC East. And as I say all these complimentary things, I still warn you, Thursday Night Football still might disappoint. There were plenty of games last year where the matchups looked juicy, but with teams not having the time to be able to implement strategies for their opponents and not having the ability to get things checked in, sometimes Thursday Night Football can be a little sloppy. And so while I hope this is going to be a very good game, I'm going to take it with a big grain of salt and wait and see if this does end up being a really good Thursday nighter. In terms of my picks, I have the Miami Dolphins taking this game. They are going to be at home. They will still have that home field advantage of the heat and the sun for at least the first quarter. And I expect the Miami Dolphins to be able to air their way to a victory in this game thanks to that home field advantage. And thanks to the Bills being a little bit of a new team, both offensively and defensively. Don't get me wrong, this game could go either way, but gun to my head, it's the Dolphins. And I don't like saying that because I do like the Bills and I don't love the Dolphins, but I think the Dolphins got this. That is now it for the video. Thank you all for joining. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and comment below. Help us out, help us grow. I'll see you all next time. Peace!